So hey, Grace Life, it's Sunday afternoon, June the 9th, 2019. This morning we started a new sermon series called the Grace Life Summer Concert Series. We're looking at the Psalms. And this morning we talked about the three main categories of Psalms: Psalms of praise, Psalms of lament, Psalms of thanksgiving, or today we use the language of orientation Psalms when my mind and my heart's oriented around God and His greatness. Disorientation Psalms when I'm going through struggles and I'm expressing my angst, my anger, my anxiety, my fear to the Lord, and then thanksgiving or reorientation Psalms. And I just thought it would be great for a few minutes to bring Pastor Mike, our worship pastor, and Bryce Landwehr, professional counselor from Wellspring, church member here at Grace Life. I just kind of want to hear from Mike about implications for a church family from what we talked about today. You know, I think about our worship when we're all together, singing together. And in 2019, there's just not a lot of place for lamenting together as a congregation. But I know that that's important to you, that we have a well-balanced worship ministry at Grace Life. So what do you try to do as a worship pastor to help us?
Well, I know through every worship service, we're really walking through the gospel story. We start with creation, and then we go into the fall, and then we go into redemption, and then we go into restoration. And as a part of that, you can't get to redemption without going through the fall. Just thinking through this morning, we started out singing Indescribable, which is all about who God is and His greatness. And so that would be who God is, His attributes. And then that last line of that song, we sang it a few times. You see the depths of my heart, and you love me the same. And so that is focusing in on our sin. The greatest, most amazing thing is that He sees us, and He loves us anyway. And then we walked through a psalm that talked about how His mercy is that He is waiting for us. He is waiting for us to come to Him for forgiveness. And then we went through Oh Praise the Name, which talks about redemption, which talks about the cross and how Jesus saves us. And then at the end, we kind of close out with that restoration, that consummation. We close out with Right Here, which is a song of us being able to come before God. And the only way we can do that is because of the finished work of Christ. So you can't get to that point without thinking on your own sin, even though that makes us uncomfortable. And but you have to get to that point, because thinking on our own sin, you see the depths of my heart and you love me the same, that allows us to praise Jesus that much more, because in spite of all that, He still loves us. And so we walk through that every service. We try to, because that's the complete finished work of Christ.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Some of the behind-the-scenes worship ministry stuff that you do and that our team does that probably most of us in the pews don't really think about. But you're really making a gospel presentation from beginning to end every Sunday in worship. So, and it's funny to me because I don't think you're so focused on trying to match up with the theme of the sermon.
Right.
But I'm preaching the gospel, and you guys are preaching the gospel to the worship ministry. And I think you and I kind of walk out every week going, man, that just came together, and it's just cool how God does that. So Bryce, I wanted to bring you in as a counselor. As I was working on this message and just thinking about times that we are oriented around the Lord, our hearts and minds are there, and unfortunately those seem oftentimes short-lived. The calamity strikes, life is hard, and we can find ourselves disoriented. I think that's where a lot of us need to go to Bryce, or to a Christian counselor, or to a trusted Christ-centered friend and talk to them, but oftentimes we don't. So just talk to us a little bit about maybe what you were kind of feeling and thinking about today as we walk through that.
It's the disorientation phase where everybody really makes the biggest mistakes. That's where they grow distant from the Lord. They go radio silent, either because they feel ashamed of their sin, that God doesn't want to talk to them, God is angry with them, so they go radio silent with the Lord. Or they're confused about why the Lord would allow something outside of them, a circumstance to happen, and so they just don't talk to Him. And they end up finding comfort in other things. They drift away in their relationship with the Lord. They grow stagnant. The way counseling works is that everybody comes into my office is disoriented, either because of that internal sin or some sin that's been done unto them. And expression and processing that out loud is the bridge to the reorientation phase.
Wow.
So how do I get my clients to express what's going on inside of them? I've got the Psalms to lead me and guide me on brilliant ways to do that, of which singing is one. So worshiping the Lord, not just about how awesome He is, but making your own psalm. Now, not everybody, maybe my artists really like to do that, my musicians, but a lot of people, I tell them, look, if you're looking for some practical ways to just express a lot of that pain and that darkness, journaling is one of the most underestimated coping skills there is in the counseling field. Being able to write out the darkness of your thoughts and your emotions and to cry out to the Lord, to learn how to do that on paper. And as you write it out on paper, it's like it's outside of you now. And so there's an expression in counseling that says, expressed depression is alleviated depression. The counseling world didn't come up with the science or the sequence of that relief system. God made it so that when you express your pain, vocally or in written word, there's relief there. So journaling is one way, writing poetry, and when better than that is actually talking. So when you're getting it out and being honest before people in your life that you need to. That could be a pastor or a friend or a family.
Sure. I know when you and I are working with the high school students here on Wednesday nights, we say that over and over and over again to them. Talk to somebody. Find a trusted follower of Christ and go talk to them. And I love what you just said about expressing that disorientation is the bridge that leads us to reorientation. And I love the fact that we find that so clearly in the Psalms. Just like today, Psalm 22, my God, why have you abandoned me? And then the 23rd Psalm, right behind that, the Lord is my shepherd. And I love that. And I don't know that the psalmist gets to Psalm 23 without Psalm 22. And I think that's so important for us to remember when we are going through those seasons that are so difficult, not to run from it, not to try to numb ourselves from that sense of life is random and crazy and I'm out of control, so I want to forget about that. I'm not going to medicate up or I'm going to pursue something else. But to take that to the Lord and the transformational work of the Spirit of God in our lives when honesty in our hearts connects with God and the way He will then move in our midst. It's incredible. So any final thoughts from you guys? We could talk about this all night.
When the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, chapter 32, verse 33, this is part of my Sunday school lesson this morning. In verse 33, God says, and they turned their backs to me instead of their faces. I think that in the disorientation stage, we turn our backs to the Lord. He wants us to turn our face to Him. Psalm 13 is a great example when King David is saying, how long will you forget me? How long will I take counsel in my own soul all the day long? And he's crying out to the Lord, and it's almost as if he's shaking a fist at the Lord. But at least he's not doing it walking away from him. He's bringing that anger underneath the shadow of his wing. That's exactly what the Lord wants us to do.
That's right.
Well, we talk all the time about preaching the gospel to yourself, and that has to do with being oriented around true north, about the truth of who God is. And if you become disoriented to that, that's when these other thoughts creep in that are not of God. They're things that you hear in the world. They're things that the enemy throws in front of you. But once you get to that stage of thanksgiving where you are beginning to reorient, you're beginning to think those thoughts again about, oh, this is who God is. Oh, this is who God is. And it is about kind of reorienting. But if you don't have that true north, if you forget about, like you said, if you turn your back, you're going to be disoriented.
Yeah, that's right.
We talk about that all the time.
We do. And I quoted at the end of the second service today, part of Come Thou Fount, tune my heart to sing thy grace. But there's that verse that says, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. And that's what we do, man, in that season of disorientation. We're so prone to wander away from the Lord. So I'm thankful for this day. I'm thankful for the time we've had in the Word. I'm thankful for the time we've had in conversation. We hope and pray it's helpful and encouraging to you all. If you're there and you find yourself in this place of disorientation today, you're in good company. Great saints throughout history have been there. Don't run from God tonight. Run to God. Take it all to Him. He cares about us. What
Amen.
great truth to hold on to this week.
Praise the
And
Lord.
thank you guys for being here.
Absolutely.
We love you, Grace Life. We'll see you soon.